I'm on Route 30, not far from Bouts Island. I'm looking at the state marker for what became known as the Battle of the Flakkie. It happened on August 13, 1777. Before we talk about the battle, let's talk a little bit about Adam Chrysler. Adam Chrysler came to the valley in about 1740 at age 8. And his family, his father, Hieronymus, became quite a prosperous farmer, and by the time Adam was an adult, he was in a pretty good situation. He took over management of the property, and he added a grist mill on his property along the Break of Bean Creek. So by the time of the Revolution, he was a man of substance in the valley, well respected. He was a lieutenant, commissioned a lieutenant in one of the provincial regiments in 1768. So he had a pretty long service in the military service, and definitely experienced, somebody who was certainly a competent officer. And again, he was just as respected as an officer as he was in his personal life. So when you come to the Revolution, he is loyal to the king. Now, most people look at decisions made about being loyal to the king, being a rebel, as black and white, good and evil. It's not that simple by any stretch of the imagination. It's a very complicated choice to remain loyal, just as it is a complicated choice to rebel and seek independence. There's a lot of factors that go into it, not the least of which are your own political beliefs, but also your property. This is a perfect example with Adam Chrysler, how important it was to not only make a political decision about what side you're on. I mean, you were born and bred to believe that the king is your sovereign ruler, after all. But when it comes down to property, people have to make a decision. What's best for the property? What's best for my family? Who's going to be the winning side if it comes to fighting? You want to be on that winning side. And of course, the British looked extremely strong in the early part of the war. But I don't think that was one of his main decisions. He was a thorough king's man. There's no shame in that. It's just that he chose the side that lost. And history tells you in 2020 that everything's hindsight is 2020. So during the war, he was very active partisan, beginning in 1777, when he helped lead what some would call a loyalist insurrection. And really what it is trying to reestablish British rule in an area that is now controlled by the Committee of Safety. So he and John McDonnell from the Charlotte Creek and Susquehanna area were here with about 100 men in early August of 1777. And Adam Chrysler had already been maintaining what was left of the Schoharie Indians, about 25 or so on his property. He was very close-knit with the Schoharie Indians, very accepted of. He was very accepted within the native culture, and he embraced it. So it was a logical choice to become an ally to them. So eventually it led to the Battle of the Flakkie, which we'll talk about in another segment. But after this, with Adam Chrysler being driven off after that battle, he wants to come back for several reasons. Number one, his family is left behind. This is a motivating factor for so many loyalists who took up arms, trying to join Burgoyne or reestablish British rule in rebel-held territory. So they were driven out. Adam Chrysler now has to live in the Indian country after receiving a little bit of, he was kind of sick after this. So he remained in Indian country for a while. But then he started leading raids through the valley. A lot of this was to destroy grain crops, livestock, and other things that were going to feed the different posts along the Mohawk and Hudson valleys. But also kind of destroy the war effort of his enemies and help drive the farmers at Schoharie Valley, Mohawk Valley to the Hudson. So he joins up with Butler's Rangers. He becomes a lieutenant, and he is associated with several raids, not the least of which is a raid on the Becker Stone House in 1781. This is in what is now Gallupville, on the far end of Foxestown at the time. But he's also involved in a raid in Broman's Land in 1781. He's with Johnson as they march through the Schoharie Valley on October 17, 1780. And he's associated with other raids throughout the war. Again, trying to reestablish British rule by driving out his enemies. The raid in 1781 in November, it was all about trying to get his family from behind enemy lines, and he succeeded in doing that after a battle at Lake Useantha, where he had to stop and fire on his pursuers, and then he was able to get his family away in what he would consider safety. So Adam Chrysler, an interesting man who remained loyal to the king and the British rule of government, and he was certainly an active partisan on that side. He ended up going to Canada after the war,